One of Britain's more distinctive locomotive designs, the Class 58s were an incredibly modular series of engines that were built to supply a market that unexpectedly disappeared within a decade of their introduction, and thus left a 50-strong fleet of machines that would never truly be tested to their full potential. The Class 58's existence is owed to the preceding Class 56 of the mid-1970s, which was developed as a universal heavyweight cargo diesel locomotive that was tailored generally towards the merry-go-round coal operations across the UK, a process that essentially acted as a long-distance conveyor belt of coal from mines and collieries to the various power stations peppered around England, Scotland and Wales. However, the Class 56s, after a prolonged development and acceptance period, were extremely flawed machines in spite of their power, with the initial crop, built under license in Romania, illustrating severe reliability issues that meant the full potential of the merry-go-round service could not be exploited, with older Class 20s, 37s and 47s being maintained in this role to cover for the underperforming Class 56s. In combination with the integral construction of the Class 56s, which made them both expensive to build and difficult to maintain due to a lack of separate frames, British Rail's Derby Works Design Office were commissioned in 1977 to investigate an alternative design with conventional frames onto which would be bolted modules containing power and electrical equipment, as well as driving cabs, this configuration of locomotive being considered cheaper to construct, easier to maintain, and would also have export potential. The fruits of Derby's labour came with a design that was of a strong load-bearing frame, onto which were mounted 6 modules, a cab, a radiator, a power unit, a turbocharger, an electrical cubicle, and a second cab. This method of construction, while unusual in the UK, meaning the mechanical parts of the locomotive were accessed from the outside rather than from the interior, an arrangement more common among American locomotives and yard switches such as the SD40-2. Regardless of this unconventional practice, the proposal promised savings of around 13% in construction compared with previous designs, with reductions in maintenance costs due to the ability to change complete modules quickly when required, the BR board quickly approving the design and placed an order for 35 units. Construction of the new class, designated Class 58, would take place at BR's Doncaster Works, but before the building process could begin, a lengthy period of retooling was required at this facility in order to accommodate the use of modular assembly. This, in combination with difficulties related to the supply of components, meaning it wouldn't be until December 1982 that the first locomotive was completed. The new locomotives utilised the same power unit, alternator and traction motors as the Class 56, but with slight modifications, while updated bogies and electronics were incorporated, and the cab layout was of a very angular configuration that again appeared to mimic some American locomotives, other facets to the Class 58 being its exclusive use of air brakes rather than dual-air vacuum brakes, and the lack of train heating equipment due to its freight-only role. It was hoped that 13 examples would be ready by the end of 1984, but by the time this date was reached, only 9 had been completed, the initial members of the class being allocated to Towton Depot near Nottingham, where they were easier to commission and more reliable than the Class 56s. Sadly, the arrival of the Class 58s was ill-timed, as despite their role being predominantly heavy coal traffic, 1984 was the same year as the National Union of Mine Workers strike, which initially meant there was no work for these locomotives to perform, while a collapse in the coal market following the strike, primarily due to customers abandoning the British coal mining industry in favour of more reliable sources abroad, meant throughout the 1980s the primary function of the Class 58s rapidly disappeared. Regardless, construction of the remaining 35 initial units, plus a further 15 examples added to the order, continued until 1987, with the final locomotive, 58050, being initially fitted with SEPEX wheel control, a feature not included with any other member of the Class 58 fleet, and was done so as to test this system prior to its application aboard the next generation of heavyweight diesel locomotive, the Class 60. With the coal industry reduced to but a fraction of its former self, other work needed to be found for these brand new locomotives, and thus the Class 58s found themselves distributed across sundry other duties, including distribution, steel and container trains, though while operating these roles, drivers noted that the Class 58s performed in a manner inferior to the Class 56s due to wheel slip issues, largely attributed to the change in bogie design. At the same time, sectorization of the British Rail Empire saw all Class 58s allocated to the coal sector, despite an earlier proposal to split them between coal and Speedlink, with these machines being repainted uniformly into coal sector grey with matching decals, while come privatisation in 1994, all units fell under the auspices of mainline freight, with some examples receiving the company's overall blue livery. Throughout the 1990s, Class 58s would see work on all manner of heavy freight traffic, and while every unit was formally allocated to Towton for maintenance and overhauls, some were outstationed at Didcot, Eastleigh, Hither Green and Stewart's Lane, where they delivered good performance and availability across the Midlands and southern England. In 1996, mainline freight became part of English, Welsh and Scottish Railway, or EWS, following a buyout by the American railroad company Wisconsin Central, with yet another livery change appearing as several Class 58s were repainted into corporate red and gold, EWS finding that the Class 58s, within their vast array of inherited locomotive ranges, were by far the most reliable and well-performing when compared to the likes of the Class 56 and Class 60. Unfortunately, EWS's rolling stock policy going forward would be one of standardization, the Class 58 sadly not being able to match the sheer power and performance of the American-derived Class 59s, which would subsequently form the basis of a widespread 250-unit order for the Class 66, of which the first examples would appear during 1999. Regardless of the Class 58's satisfactory service, their small 50-unit fleet was not enough to save them from being phased out in favour of the new Class 66, with 58017 and 58022 being placed into store during 1999 upon the arrival of their replacements, 8 more units being removed from service shortly thereafter, while their home ground of the East Midlands coal trains would be handed over to Class 66s during 2001. In the end, the surviving 20 locomotives would be reallocated to Eastleigh near Southampton for use in southern England and the Midlands, but this transfer would prove to be incredibly brief, as within a year the Class 58s were facing the end of their lives with EWS as more Class 66s came online, the final turn of duty for the Class 58 taking place in September 2002, when 58047 hauled an Eastleigh to Wembley car train. Following a farewell charter dubbed the Bone Idol from London King's Cross to Skegness and return during the same month, it appeared that the Class 58 would be rendered extinct from the UK rail network, while its case-specific nature for heavy freight work and coal, amid a sea of Class 66s being introduced by various operators as the new standard cargo engine for Britain, meant there was a distinct possibility that these machines would never run again. However, a turn of fortune came in 2000, when Class 58s recently withdrawn from the East Midlands coal services were offered for export to Spain as part of the construction of their vast high-speed network across the Iberian Peninsula, with 8 examples initially being dispatched, followed by various other Class 58s as well as Class 56s to France for use in constructing the LGV Est from Paris to Strasbourg. Other exports came in the form of Dutch freight company ACTS, who hired 4 units to work a new freight shuttle between Rotterdam and Veendam, and were employed from 2005 to 2009, these locomotives later joining their former stablemates in France and Spain for the further construction of high-speed railways. Class 58s would continue their work across the European railway system until the mid-2010s, with some units being returned to Britain for store, while others would languish at service depots and rail yards across France and Spain for years until the scrapping of these engines commenced in 2019. 2023 seeing 23 stored examples broken up at the Élysée depot in Normandy 15 years after they had worked their last trains. Back in Britain, 7 of the Class 58s that remained in the UK were put on a tender list in 2010, with 6 of them being scrapped, while a further 5 were disposed of in 2015, and the last survivors, if not exported, were sold by the end of 2016, though amid the mass withdrawal and scrapping of these barely utilised machines, 4 units have been preserved in varying degrees of intactness across the country. Of note is 58016, which was purchased by the Class 58 Locomotive Group and taken to Barrow Hill for restoration, with a view that, in cooperation with the UKRL at their headquarters in Leicester, this machine could be returned to mainline working order, the restoration of 58016 requiring the purchase and stripping of classmate 58045, which provided various useful components and parts for the locomotive prior to its scrapping in 2010. Beyond 58016, 58012 and 023 were purchased for preservation in 2016 at the battlefield line, with 58023 becoming the first of the class to be started in preservation and has now been moved to Leicester alongside 58016, where it is maintained in operational condition, while the last intact Class 58 to be saved from the cutter's torch is 58048, which is currently in a non-operational condition at the battlefield line. Furthermore, 58022 was also preserved, though its applications following its rescue greatly differ from its other saved stablemates, with the locomotive having been stripped of its modular body shell so that its frame could be donated to the construction of a replica of Ivett's LMS 10,000, the first mainline diesel express locomotive in Britain, as built in 1947, while one of 58022's cabs has been cosmetically restored to sector coal livery and now resides outside Wirksworth Station. In terms of future work on the main line, while the Class 56 that the Class 58 was intending to supersede continues to see widespread work across the UK system, the Class 58, based on its small surviving numbers, appears destined to remain simply as a preserved locomotive, plying its trade in the service of heritage railways or potentially on mainline charters for the likes of 58016 and 023. Regardless, the Class 58s are something of a tragic figure in the realm of Britain's vast array of diesel freight locomotives, being built to serve a once thriving market that practically disappeared upon their introduction into service, while in the face of privatisation and the demands for cost reduction and standardisation, the 50-strong fleet was simply too small to justify its continued operation alongside the Class 66, thus making it a contender for early retirement. Nevertheless, while the Class 58s were never fully proven in revenue work, the basic concept was extremely sound and achieved the objectives British Rail set out for it, creating what is now considered to be a cult classic among enthusiasts, either for its understated but powerful nature, its unique modular design, or for the fact that it was an essentially brand new locomotive cut down in the prime of its life.